Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Making It in Holland, a channel all about expat life and entrepreneurship here in the Netherlands. And lately, some of you probably noticed I'm also making videos about finding a job that you love. And occasionally, I'm having these sit-down videos where I don't even really have a script and I'm just talking to you about whatever that comes to my mind. And today is essentially one of those videos. If you're new here with me and if you want to stick around these episodes, you're more than welcome to do so. But I guess this video is more for my OG subscribers who have been with me the past couple of months already and already know that I am from Turkey and I moved to the Netherlands when I was 11 as an expat. And I'm a third culture kid, and some of the things I went through. But in today's episode, I really just wanted to dive a lot more deeper into what does it mean to be a third culture kid and live in the Netherlands as an expat. What are some of the struggles that you face on a daily basis? And most importantly, how can you overcome some of those challenges? So if any of these topics sound interesting to you, definitely stay tuned because this is just going to be all kinds of unfiltered, me just talking things through with you. So I moved to the Netherlands when I was 11 years old from Izmir, Turkey, a beautiful, beautiful city in Turkey in the Aegean coast. It's the third largest city in Turkey. Filled with amazing culture, great people, great food, just great atmosphere. The climate is basically sunny all year around, except for a couple of months in the wintertime when it gets cold. But with that, I mean, it never really freezes or snows or anything like that. So that's kind of the situation where I was brought up in and the situation where I was really accustomed to. And then we moved as expats to the Netherlands, to The Hague, to be very specific, with my parents back in 2004 as highly skilled migrants because of my parents' jobs, and have basically stayed here ever since, except a couple of years ago my parents did move back and I ended up staying because I am working here and I have quite a large network here, especially when it comes to the business stuff that I'm doing. I spoke a lot about that from an 11-year-old's perspective in the video that's popping up on your screen right now, so if you're at all interested, I highly encourage you to go and check that one out. It's a little bit of an emotional video. I rewatched it a couple of days ago and I cried again. And I don't really cry a lot in my other videos. I would like to think that I have a relatively thick skin, but now coming to think about it, I think maybe I'm a lot more emotional than I'd like to admit. Anyway, so that's a little bit of context of, my background. And moving to the Netherlands really meant that I had to find a way to not just be a preteen, which is what I was back then, and find my identity and really become this person that I wanted to become, whatever that might have been. And also find a way to navigate the culture that I'm in. It's Western Europe, it's a different language, it's a completely different mindset, completely different culture. So what were some of the ways that I managed to almost kind of discover for myself to be able to deal with these things that could have potentially been troublesome for me? A quick note here. When you're young and you move to a new place, you're a lot more malleable, which means you can actually, adjust to things a lot quicker versus, for example, my parents. I know for a fact that they did have a more difficult time adjusting to some things than I did. And that's, with the fact that just simply comes with the whole notion of, they're grown-ups, they're adults, and their identities almost fully formed, if I may say so, because I think that, from the day we're born until the day we die, doesn't matter how old we are still evolving. But after a certain age, after puberty, our identity is in its core somewhat defined. So then it becomes a lot more difficult to break through things. So when I was younger, I think a big reason why I managed to adapt to things a lot quicker than I maybe would like to admit, was because of the fact that I was really young and very, very open to new things and, new experiences. After a while, I started to observe things that are maybe the downsides of being a third culture kid. So the fact that I had amazing friendships, but they would last a couple of years because everybody was international at my school. Everybody was an expat, which meant that their parents had to travel to different places for work very often. And most of the time they had to completely relocate their full life to a brand new city. And that meant that I would make friends relatively quickly, and I would also lose friends relatively quickly as well. So a big way that I dealt with that was find meaningful ways to form relationships and enjoy them while they last in person. Because even if after a person moves away and you keep in touch with them, through Facebook or WhatsApp, or occasionally you meet up for Zoom calls, it's never the same as living day to day that friendship out, especially when you're at school. That's definitely one way that I, taught myself to enjoy being a third culture kid. Really enjoy the moment, not really take a lot of things for granted, because, in a couple of months, in a couple of years, you don't even really know if you're really going to have that friendship or not. And I think in a weird way, this also reflected in other parts of my life where I am definitely so much more mindful of being in the present moment, and that tomorrow is never guaranteed, and that, things out of my own control happen all the time. So I might as well just enjoy just being there. And it's a lot more easier said than done, but I'm so aware of this because I really lived through that. And if any of you relate to, making friends and then losing them after a couple of years, let me know down in the comments, how that felt for you, because it's never really a pleasant experience. So this is one thing that I would I don't want to say envy, but I do when I look back at some of my friends back in Izmir, who have stayed there, who have lived there, who have really rooted themselves there, made friends there. They have friends from a very, very young age, and they're still together. And this is something that, as a third culture kid, very difficult to achieve unless you actively make that effort to keep in touch with everybody, and you're a lot more open to traveling and making your schedule a lot more flexible, which, by the way, I absolutely have no issues with. And if the circumstances currently were a lot more different, I think I would be so much more open to traveling to those places and meet my friends like I've done in the past. Definitely, this is one way to deal with this kind of burden that comes with being a third culture kid and an expat. And I think not many people talk about this because, living abroad is this thing that's glamorized out there, and grass is always greener on the other side, guys. You always think oh, moving to the Netherlands is going to make life so much better, or moving to X place is just going to switch things up. But the downside is it just becomes a lot more difficult to meet people, make genuine friends, and also keep in touch with the people that you were friends with back in the day. But ironically, a way to get over that is to continue to meet other expats and other internationals and other third culture kids if possible, because once a third culture kid, forever a third culture kid. And I think this really explains a lot of the videos I've been making in this channel about me struggling to adapt to the Dutch culture, or maybe being overly critical about some things, because I am always going to be this outlier, this third culture thing, this person that never fully understands a way of just having one way of thinking about things, one way of looking at culture and people and experiences. So I think when I meet somebody who was very Dutch, by the way, this happens to me when I meet someone who's also very Turkish, that I almost instantly freak out a little bit, because I feel I'm not going to be able to fully relate, and they're gonna see me as this like weird alien who has all of these like different bits and pieces about them, but nothing really comes together in a coherent, cohesive way. Let me know if any of this makes sense. I know this is one of those sit down videos where I'm basically rambling for hours, but essentially a way I deal with, with my situation is by meeting other expats and internationals. So that way, the stuff we talk about and the things that we relate about are just things that really make me happy. It's almost like an antidote to this disease that I have. And it's so good to be able to connect with others that go through similar things or have dealt with similar things in the past. So that's definitely something that's been great for me and potentially could really work well for you as well, especially, if you're looking to move here and you're a bit worried about like adjusting and fitting in. Why fit in when you can stand out with other like-minded third culture kids and expats? So that's definitely the way I like to see it. But this hasn't been so easy for me because I did my bachelor's in the UK. I was at the University of Kent in Canterbury. Beautiful, beautiful place, lovely campus, beautiful university. I met some amazing people there, some of whom I still keep in touch with. The way that I saw a different culture there and meeting other kind of like international students at university have been this kind of interesting experience and a very neat way of building on from my experience going to an international school. For those of you who don't know, I went to the American School of The Hague, amazing school, amazing teachers. Loved my time there. I mean, I had my like ups and downs, but we all do when we go through high school, don't we? And going from there to the UK to a relatively international university still was kind of like nice for me. And a lot of the people I met at university were international, and that really helped the situation. And I feel like something kind of went wrong when I moved back to the Netherlands. So how that all played out was I had an internship offer in Rotterdam at a company, and I moved here and did my internship. I believe it was 6-month period. And then after that, I applied to universities back in the UK again, and I had an interview at a couple, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because otherwise this channel wouldn't be here today, I couldn't go back to the UK. I had to stay here in the Netherlands, and I started my studies in Masters in Architecture at Eindhoven University of Technology in the more sort of like southern, southeastern part of the country. Great area. It's located in the Brabant region, so definitely would recommend you to travel and check it out. Very beautiful, very cozy and cute, but then again, I come from a bigger city, so for me, a lot of things are cozy and cute. Like I find Amsterdam cozy and cute, and it's the capital city here, so that's just like, my like perception of what a big city is, basically what I'm trying to say is, after I moved here and I started to study here, I became a lot more alert and aware of the Dutch culture and the Dutch way of thinking, which I wasn't previously aware before because I was in this like international expat bubble back at school for an extended amount of time. And then I was in the UK, so I was like removed for a while. And then when I came back, the reality was really like a shocker. I mean, I lived here in the Netherlands, on and off for 15 plus years, but living here in the Netherlands for me really started when I actually got my first full-time job as an architect in Rotterdam. That wasn't that long time ago. That was back in 2017. Honestly, I feel like I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to a lot of the things that I talk about in this channel, and that's why I share them with such openness and such almost like I have no reservations, no filter, because I'm in a way like relearning things that I should have learned a long time ago and sharing them with all of you guys. But basically all this to say, a really great way to keep yourself sane is to remind yourself where you come from, stay rooted as much as possible, and keep in touch with all of your friends, whether that's back home or the friends that you met, during your school years, because That's basically what gives life meaning, that there are other people out there that you shared a certain portion of your time with and you have these amazing memories with, and you keep them alive. And another big part of that is to continue to meet like-minded people. And if you feel a lot more comfortable like me in a very international environment, go seek out that environment. You don't necessarily have to like force yourself to be part of the Dutch culture immediately. I mean, if you stay here after a couple of years, you're going to get accustomed to it, whether you like it or not. But you shouldn't have to force yourself to be someone you're not. And for the longest time, I had this thing that I had to be like a lot more Dutch and act a lot more Dutch than I am. But I'm just me. And I don't want to just kind of pretend here and put on a show for no reason. I'm still learning. And do I identify myself with the Dutch? Do I identify myself as Dutch? Definitely not, but I'm a lot more open-minded now, a lot more observant, learning a lot more about the nuances of the culture that I previously wasn't so open to. Because if you watch this video that's popping up right now, all about like learning the language and stuff, I do speak Dutch and I'm actually relatively fluent. Like I can keep up a conversation, I can read well, I can write well. But knowing the language doesn't necessarily mean like you understand the culture and you're part of the society. For those of you who really want to move here, I really want to like own that in. Those are not the same things. You need to make an extra effort to be part of that culture, to be part of that society. That brings me to my next point. You still should make somewhat of an effort to meet other people. And by that I mean locals, Dutch people, and try to understand their worldview, the way they live life in a very objective way without criticizing. And maybe take like the bits and pieces that you like as a third culture kid or as an expat to add on top of yourself, on top of your identity, to make yourself like a better, more improved version of yourself instead of trying to fit within a certain societal norm. And this is something I struggled with. I mean, there is a saying here in the Netherlands, doe normaal, omdat ben jij gek genoeg. Excuse me for my accent. I'm gonna redo that. I feel like I can do that a lot better. Okay. The sirens are passing by. All right. Doe normaal omdat jij bent gek genoeg. Which means just act normal because by just being normal, you're already standing out enough. And maybe this is a personality thing. That saying never really like meshed so well with me, and I think that just really showed throughout my professional career up until a point where I said doei to all of the jobs I had and I went down the route of full-time entrepreneurship, which is a topic for another day, and it really hasn't been easy, but that's been one of the main reasons why I really just didn't mesh, basically. And I attribute a lot of that to my upbringing as a third culture kid. This need to have variety, this need to not be fit into a box. Like for me, it's okay if you're rounded and you don't fit the square hole. That's perfectly fine. This really reminds me that very famous Stanford graduation speech by Steve Jobs. I'm going to link that in the description for any one of you who is kind of going through something similar as me, where you're trying to like find your path and find your way of being and what you're supposed to be in the world, where he talks about, being a round peg, not fitting in a square hole. And that's okay because you have a different thing that you're going to be accomplishing. That's not necessarily prescribe, gosh, I'm having a really hard time talking, prescribed within the societal norms. I think that's really important to keep in mind. Another thing that I want to touch upon in this video is getting out of the negative thought patterns as much as possible. This is, again, one of those things, so much more easier said than done, but every time you get yourself in this negative thought pattern, whether that's this FOMO that's being induced, you have to really be able to catch that thought when it's in your head and just say thank you, but I'm not listening to you, and just kind of let it go. So what do I mean, and how does that relate to being a third culture kid, you might ask? Well, when you're a third culture kid, you have different frames of references. So for example, I also lived in Italy for a portion of my life. I spent time in Milano, wonderful, beautiful city. I loved it. And I, also got different like bits and bobs of the culture there that I added on top of my personality, and was really like wonderful. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that time. Now I have different frames of references. I have my time in the UK, I have my time in Italy, obviously I have my time in Turkey. So sometimes I think of the good times back in the day, and I think of the friendships from back in the day and the things I did back in the day. And sometimes you get into this negative thought pattern, and it can really take over you, and it can be really, really overwhelming, and go down this negative path. And I have to actively remind myself, like, those were great times, those were wonderful memories, and I'm probably going to relive them one time in my life again, if not make better ones. And thank you so much for popping up inside my head. I really appreciate that, but I'm so much more now focused on the now and the direction I'm heading towards in the future. This is something I do several times a day, and it really does help me keep myself grounded. This is turning into a TED Talk, but I guess to summarize, you really have to be able to live your life to the fullest in the moment you have with the people around you, because the next couple of months are not guaranteed. But still keep in touch with those people as much as possible. Meet similar like-minded people wherever you are. Don't ever take anything for granted, and at the same time, be a lot more open-minded to the culture that's hosting you as an expat or a third culture kid, and learn the best things from them. And instead of sort of pushing those away, take them and, let them be part of your new identity, even if that means you become a square peg in a round hole and you don't exactly fit in. I guess that's just the best way to summarize it. And on this note, I also would say social media plays a big role, because this is one of the main ways I keep in touch with, all the great people that I met back in the day in all of these different countries. And you see the stuff that they're doing, their jobs, their experiences, their friends, their travels. And you sometimes think, well, that could have been me too, or that should have been me too, because I also lived that life, but now I have a different reality. And I think this kind of FOMO, fear of missing out, becomes a lot more evident within the third culture kids. Again, let me know down in the comments if you relate to any of this, that you always have like that different frame of reference. You have something to compare this current moment with, which by doing so, in a way, reduces the significance of the current moment, but it shouldn't be like that. This is something I'm also super mindful of. And with that said, this was a super, super ranty video, but I want to end it on a good note. A good note is that when you are an expat and a third culture kid, gosh, how many times did I say third culture kid in this video? If you counted it, let me know as well. Is that it's so wonderful. It's almost like a superpower, because you have multiple facets to you, and you could be anywhere, anytime, and you have friends and people literally all over the world. And that is your superpower. So every time you get let down and you get upset because you're missing out on something, or just a memory from a couple of years ago just like pops into your head, just remember those are the things that make you who you are, and that's your superpower. And really embrace it, and really talk about your experiences and share them with the world, because it's really, really that powerful. Be you, take up space, be as round as you want, even if the hole is a square. Keep going and just keep being yourself, and don't feel this pressure to really fit in somewhere. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in, especially if you made it up until this point in the video. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being part of my very own journey of making it here in the Netherlands. And as usual, you know what to do. Until the next episode, don't forget to stay awesome, and I will see you very, very soon. If you want to see the full story of me moving to the Netherlands, check out the video that's popping up on your screen right now, and we will meet again.